Welcome back to another episode of the North Star Takes podcast. I'm Bailey Paulicki. He's Jacob Liberta. You can find all our videos here on our YouTube channel, and we are a Minnesota sports podcast. So if you're a sports fan, especially a Minnesota sports fan, please give us a subscribe and give this video a like. We're going to be talking Minnesota Vikings today and kind of our way too early draft fits. It's obviously mock draft season. It's the off season now officially since the Super Bowl is over. So you're seeing all sorts of mock drafts, all sorts of people talking about potential fits for all these different teams. So we're just going to go over a few names. Liberta's kind of come up with a list here of some guys he's seen getting mocked to the Vikings quite often. And we'll just kind of go through who they are, what position they play, and how they could potentially fit in on this team. So without further ado, the first name on your list, Liberta, is Ahmad Sauce Gardner. Tell me a little bit about Sauce.
Well, he's got a certain level of swag to him when people call him Sauce Gardner. So I think that's worth throwing out there. I mean, I don't think you can have the name Sauce and not be able to back it up. At least I would hope. So as far as this guy goes, and the really important things to know is that he is a big, tall corner. He's got the long arms that you like to see with your corners. That everybody always looks for those wingspans. And he's coming from Cincinnati. He obviously was in the college football playoff semifinal there when they took on Alabama. And all season he was regarded as one of the best corners in college football. He needs to put on a little weight in most people's eyes because I don't even think he's 190. I think he's a little bit less than that. So obviously he'll need to get an NFL strength training program, but that's not the biggest of concerns, I don't think. I think that gets easier every year, it feels like, for players to become NFL ready quicker and quicker. But as far as he goes, I think everybody credits him for being pretty good. I think he's best in a very zone-heavy defense. But he can also jam receivers up pretty good at the line. He plays good press coverage when he needs to, and he can take on all the best receivers. He did in college football. And then you got just a stout run defender on the edge too. He can tackle, which I think is huge. I know that can be a lost start with some corners. And I know at least under the previous regime with Zimmer, that was a calling card. That was a reason, or that was actually one of the things they made a guy like Trey Waynes good at. Obviously, like if you drafted Gardner, if he was the pick, you'd like to be a little bit better than Trey Waynes, but our Waynes turned into a great tackler. So I think it'd be great to add a guy like Gardner who maybe brings a little bit better coverage skills too. So just throwing that out there. So I think Gardner's been seeing a lot of mocks of the Vikings, and I think he would make a very solid choice. But he's also, I think it's a little bit concerning because obviously the level of competition he played wasn't always the best. He played in the American Athletic Conference, which is not exactly the best competition college football has to offer. Obviously, it's non-Power 5, so I think that's a concern. But at the same time, he showed out when they played Alabama, so I think that says something on its own because that's about as good as it gets usually for college football. So I think that's worth considering too. But I think he'd just make a solid selection, I guess. Long story short, I know he's one of the top 2 corner prospects in this draft, or widely regarded as that. And I could very well see the Vikings taking him. What do you think of Sauce Gardner, Bailey?
Yeah, I mean, all the stuff you just said there really intrigues me. And I'm sure there's some people who will watch this. It'll be like, really? You guys are talking cornerback again for the Vikings?
I know, it's frustrating.
Like, especially if they decide to keep Kirk Cousins, it makes a ton of sense that they'd go corner because, I mean, outside of Cam Dantzler, they basically have nothing at the position. Patrick Peterson's a free agent, but even if you bring him back, he's old. So, and I think we've kind of decided Dantzler's probably not going to be your shutdown corner. He just doesn't have the build for it. I don't know if he's got the swag for it either. Like a guy like Sauce might. So obviously this is super intriguing. I mean, the competition does worry me a little bit, but I don't know. I think corner, if you got the skill set, if you got the traits, I think it can translate to the NFL. And there's definitely a need at this position for the Vikings. So if we're not in the market for a quarterback early on in the draft here, picking corner makes a ton of sense to me. So I'm definitely in on Sauce Gardner. I love the name, and I think the Vikings could use some swag on that defense. So
absolutely, and I love that he's 6'2" as well. I think that's a great size for a corner that can match up with any receiver that the other team might present.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Let's move on to another corner you have here who many experts actually have higher on their boards, but you've seen him sliding in some of these recent mocks. Derek Stingley Jr., corner from LSU. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, this is the other guy that's considered as a top 2 corner in this draft along with Sauce. So the reason Stingley has slid in some analysts' mock drafts is just because of the injury concerns. He only played 3 games last year, which obviously that's a little bit worrisome. But if you go date it back to his freshman season back at LSU when they won
Hmm.
that national championship, the whole team had all that success. They had, I think, 14 guys drafted after that, which is
Yeah.
just an absurd number. And there's a lot of people out there, a lot of the really in the know draft analysts that I trust. They
Hmm.
believe he could have been a top 5 pick right out of college. Like they think he was that good. They think he could have been the best corner right away. And that's the same thing I heard from Coach O. He was on Pardon My Take, and they had him on about a month ago or so. And he said when Stingley came on the campus, he graduated from high school a semester early, so he came on would have been the winter of 2018, January 2019, basically right before LSU played a bowl game. And he said Stingley was already better. Like the minute he got on campus, he's already better than the rest of the corners on the roster. And he thinks
Jeez.
he thinks he could have played right away in that bowl game there and started into the top corner. So I think that certainly says something right out of high school. Then he comes into that big stellar season LSU had. He had 6 picks, had like 13, 15 pass deflections as a true freshman. So like this guy
Yeah.
can ball. And if you just looked at that, a lot of people believe that next draft he could have been a top 3, top 5 pick if he was draft eligible. But then the next 2 seasons happened. He had some injury concerns, so I think that's always a worry. I know that can derail any prospect, even the best of ones. So I think that's going to cause people to hesitate a little bit. But if you're just looking at that freshman season and you think you can keep him on the field, get him in a good program with your organization, I mean, this guy's the limit. He's got all the tools, he's got all the ability. It's just keeping him on the field and putting him really in the right system. But pound for pound, he's the best press corner in the draft, and that's exactly what you want because that's what's going to stop all those good X receivers in the league, all those top guys, is if you're going to be able to jam up with the line of scrimmage and just take it away from take away the favorite weapon from a quarterback, and that's massive in this league. That's one of the hallmarks of a great team. I mean, you saw it, the Rams just won the Super Bowl, and Jalen Ramsey is their top corner,
Yeah.
albeit he did not have a great Super Bowl by any means, but still, like they got to that point in large part. At least a part of it was Jalen Ramsey. Kind of considered that top corner, a shutdown guy you like to have, along with the elite edge rusher, probably a
Yeah.
bookend like left tackle, and then obviously it all starts with the quarterback. But I think this would be a very important position for the Vikings to get, and Stingley could easily be another guy that could step into your day one and be the best corner in the roster, and there'd be no if, ands, or buts about it. So I'd get really excited about this one just because I think the potential here is easily higher than I think obviously everybody at corner in this draft, but maybe just in the draft period.
Yeah, I mean, just getting a high level player like that from a great university like LSU. I mean, the Vikings don't stumble across guys like this too often where they, have a shot at getting potentially the best player at their position in the draft. So, yeah, I'd be all on board for Derek Stingley Jr. Now, does he have the prototypical size that you like to have on the outside as well?
He does. He's got a little bit more beef to him right now. I think he's more pushing 200 than Sauce is, but
Okay,
I think he's about an inch or two shorter. So
gotcha.
that's not too big of a worry. He's about I think 6 foot 6'1". So
Hmm.
I think it's fine size, and I think he
Yep.
can definitely get the job done in the NFL.
Awesome. Yeah. So, I mean, super intriguing prospect, I think. And if he can somehow fall, I definitely wouldn't hesitate to take him because I know picking corners sucks because we've done it so much, but I think these 2 guys we went over here really have the potential to just be really good NFL corners. And
Absolutely.
they can kind of help Dancer settle into that second corner role and kind of just solidify our secondary. And, whether it's Harrison Smith back there or Cam Bynum getting some run, if you got a corner like with these guys to the mix, I think that makes our secondary strong. So
Absolutely.
I'm definitely on board for that. But now let's talk about a fun pick potentially here.
Yes.
You've seen some mock drafts mocking Malik Willis to us. Now people are all over the board on him. Some people have him as their QB1. Some people have him as a second round pick just because he's got so many raw traits that people aren't sure how long it's going to take for him to develop in the NFL. So what are your thoughts on Malik Willis, and do you think he's definitely worth a look at pick number 12?
I think he's certainly worth a look. I think this guy's the most toolsy quarterback in the draft. I think he's got the highest boom potential, but he also has the highest bust potential because he didn't play in a great system at Liberty. Obviously, Liberty not played any great competition. When they did a few times, he did not look good, plain and simple. But at the
Yep.
same time, he got away like was it him just not playing very well against as NFL caliber of a defense as you can find in SEC schools that they played sometimes, but also is it the talent around him? Like, did he not have enough requisite talent to be able to make anything happen in the first place? Like, would anybody have been able to make those plays or have a good performance?
Right.
Maybe not, but it all depends on your coaching staff and how much trust you have in them, how much trust they have in themselves to be able to truly develop a quarterback that has all the tools, but not necessarily the traditional, really quarterback play, I guess, because the biggest red flag with him is that he just didn't throw from the pocket that much. He continuously, if you go watch back Liberty games and Liberty highlights, you'll find that he continuously bailed out of the pocket. And I mean, that's what I like to see is guys make plays out of the pocket and really be improvisational. I think that's the way the league's going. But at the same time, you got to have some sort of pocket presence, and he just did not have that. He did not have the structure there. So I think that's really the biggest thing is if you can kind of bring them along in the more traditional areas, and then you're really going to reap the rewards if you can do that and bring the game to a full circle.
Yeah,
that he'll be able to make those highlight reel plays for you when you absolutely need to have it because he already has that potential there. So, yeah, I think this is a very intriguing possibility that I think the Vikings should pursue. It's certainly got its risks, but at the same time, this guy's got all the makings of a dynamic quarterback in this league. Everybody's saying, obviously, you got to wait until the combine happens to really know this, but they estimate that he'll only be about a touch slower than Lamar Jackson as far as speed goes, like just natural speed. And he's going to be, I think, running in the 4.3 somewhere, which for a quarterback, that's just nuts.
That is insane.
Can't believe that. So there's a lot to like here. I know he's a little bit shorter. He's only 6'1", and I know quarterbacks usually hovering around that 6 foot range. It's a little bit sketchy, but at the same time, I think he's just big enough, and he's also pretty thickly built. He's kind of picture Jalen Hurts, I might say, but I think you'd obviously hope he might be able to throw the ball a little bit better than that because I know Hurts certainly has his downfalls in the passing game for Philly, but I think something like that, and then hopefully you can bring along that traditional passing game and in Willis's overall ability.
For me, it's just tough because there's no clear-cut QB1 in this draft, although a lot of experts are kind of leaning toward Malik Willis at this point, which kind of makes me think if you want him, you're going to have to get inside the top 10 to get him. Mm-hmm. But I mean, this would basically come down to Kirk Cousins is probably gone, or maybe you keep him and you just don't care and you pick a guy like Malik Willis anyway, because the fact of the matter is Malik Willis is going to have to sit and develop for a year probably. Sure. If you're starting this guy straight out of the draft, then you might have some issues, I think. So he's definitely going to need a redshirt year. And, maybe they see enough in Kellen Mond where they trust him to start. I don't know. But this would basically be just saying, we're drafting we're going to pick our first round guy, but he's not going to start all season, which, isn't easy to convince the fan base to accept, which, is understandable. But just so intriguing. All the traits you just said, the speed, the athleticism, the build. He's got a cannon of an arm. As long as the accuracy's there and he can hang in the pocket a little longer rather than bailing so soon, he might have a tendency to kind of get himself in trouble by bailing too soon and getting himself sacked, stuff like that. So if he can just clean up some of that stuff and really, I think, just learn the game a little more. Obviously, the NFL's played at a different speed, so I think sitting back and watching for a year would really help him. But for sure, an intriguing pick. And honestly, the anti-Vikings pick of the last decade. Vikings would never pick a player like this. That they had a shot to pick Lamar Jackson, even though they had just signed Kirk Cousins in that offseason. But I mean, this would be extremely intriguing just to have a potential game-breaking quarterback like a lot of these teams in the league do now. And if Malik Willis has any sort of potential to be that, I'm on board. I don't care if he has to sit for a year. I think that'd be a super fun draft pick. And yeah, we have other needs and we have holes, but the Vikings aren't going to win the Super Bowl in 2022. So I don't think there's any reason to draft for need like we have been doing the last several years. So Malik Willis is definitely a very intriguing pick, I think. Yeah. Do you have any other names that have kind of been on your radar here before we wrap up? Some other guys you've seen potentially going to the Vikings?
Yeah, I'd throw a couple other names out there that I've seen in the mocks and that feel like they make logical sense. I know another position in need for the Vikings, whether they keep Danielle Hunter or not, is edge rusher. I think.
Yep.
I don't want him at 8 sacks last year, but at the same time, I'm pretty sure he had like 5 or 6 of them in just the Bears games against an awful team. So
Yeah.
like you gotta take that into context. So I don't think anybody in that defensive end room is really coming along as much as we'd like. I know we still have some other project players sitting there like Patrick Jones and Janarius Robinson, who was out all last year on IR, but I certainly think there's potential there, but at the same time, it's kind of nice to get a blue chip prospect. We haven't taken a defensive end in the first round since I think it was 2005, Erasmus
Yeah.
James. So like that's been a little while. So it'd be nice to take a guy that's more NFL ready right away and could help us opposite Daniel Hunter or maybe become the Daniel Hunter. But I obviously that's pretty hard to want some guy to automatically turn into that. But I'm just saying, like in the future, turn into somebody that's capable of being number one defensive end, I should say. So
Yeah.
I think that's certainly a consideration here. That's why I'd say George Karlaftis from Purdue. I think that's certainly an option out there. I know he's been consistently referred to as the third best edge rusher in this class, behind obviously what everybody anticipates being the top 2 picks and Thibodeau and Aiden Hutchinson. And then you got Karlaftis. I don't know. He's probably pretty likely to go in the top 10, but it's possible it could slip out. You just never know. And
Yep.
it's always a big thing with the drafts and where quarterbacks go, and that pushes other guys down the board. So that could be a guy like Karlaftis, or you could consider somebody like David Ojabo from Michigan. I know he has all the natural ability, but at the same time, he has very limited football experience. But if you think you have good defensive coaches that can bring him along, then maybe the potential is higher with him than a guy like a Karlaftis. But
Right.
at the same time, too, when you think about his college production, he's only had one good year, and albeit it was a great season, he had like 11 sacks. But at the same time, he was opposite Aiden Hutchinson, who's obviously going to get all the offensive attention when you're playing, especially in college football. So did some of it come from that? I don't know. So I think that's something you got to evaluate here with the combine coming up and at the pro days and things like that. If he has all the traits and all the makings of defensive end, you think your coaches are good enough, then by all means have at it. I think that could be worth a pick, but that might not be the safest one, as maybe a guy like Karlaftis or maybe another edge rusher that comes up the board as we go through the draft process here. Like I said, with the combine and then all the pro days to play out, and then how do these guys interview? Like, do you think they have the work ethic it takes to turn themselves into a great NFL player, or are they just here for fame and fortune? I don't know. I think that's certainly something you got to weed out too, and that you got to really factor in the way Kwesi's going to evaluate these guys as far as what traits he's looking for. Maybe what these guys are saying in their interviews might be a lot different than what Rick was doing. So I think you don't truly know what the Vikings are going to do until we really go through this first draft, and maybe you'll start to get an inkling of where we're going moving forward.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what's going to make this draft so fascinating, is we have no idea what they're thinking, what direction they'll go, how aggressive they'll be. Do they like trading up or trading back? Do they like standing pat in their spot, which the Vikings rarely do? So, yeah, it's just going to be fascinating. I'd be really happy with an edge rusher too, just because of how important that position is.
Mm-hmm.
And especially, just how bone dry we've been at that position, and people talk about, you don't want to let Danielle Hunter go, but it's like, we've gone 500 without him. Like, we've gone 500 with basically no edge rushers the last 2 seasons.
That's a good point.
So, I mean, if you can just get a young guy in here that, could potentially be your, next elite edge rusher, he doesn't even have to be elite, but he could just be very good.
Yeah.
I think that's helpful too. But like we've talked about before, I think this team's going to start leaning into offense more anyways. So, I mean, I'm all for keeping Danielle Hunter, but in terms of like clearing cap space and stuff like that, if we're going to be kind of rebuilding anyways, I'd be okay getting some draft compensation for him. So
absolutely.
And yeah, edge rusher is super, super intriguing. And yeah, between corner and edge, that's where I would bet we probably draft in the first round between those 2 positions. But yeah, there's always that quarterback, potential there as well. But
exactly. And I'd also add on the defensive end too. I think that's a sneaky position as far as saving money and increasing the production of your team and your defense specifically, and really taking it to a new level without really maxing out on the money you're spending there. Because I think defensive end, like you said, is a premier position. So if you're getting by with a rookie contract and a guy that's just wreaking havoc on the other team's quarterback, I think that's the most important thing, or one of the most important things to a team's success is obviously the quarterback play, and then how you stop the other team's quarterback as far as getting after him, making life hard as far as pass rush goes. So I think that goes a little undervalued sometimes, but I think getting a good edge rusher on a rookie scale contract could help your team a lot.
For sure. And I'm kind of happy we're at the point where we don't have to say, like, draft a freaking offensive lineman in the first round. Because
that's so nice.
I know we need a center and a guard, but I just think we really need to go pay people to play those positions. Like,
yes,
you don't have to pay for the top guy on the market, but good grief, get a veteran center in here or something. Like, don't go draft a Tyler Linderbaum in the first round. And, he's not going to be a Garrett Bradbury per se, but, you don't need to pick a center in the first round. I mean, other teams are developing these interior offensive linemen from the 6th round, the 5th round,
Well, yeah, look at the Chiefs. They got Creed Humphrey in the 3rd round, and he's been one of the best centers in football this year.
And they have that, what's his name? Is it Trey Smith?
Oh, yeah, Trey Smith. It took him in the 6th round from Tennessee. Yeah, right guard. Yeah.
Yeah, so it can be done. You just have to have the right coaching infrastructure in place. But it'll certainly be interesting to see what other names come about here within the coming months. We're really only like 2.5 months away from the NFL draft. So kind of crazy it's coming up that fast, but we'll certainly keep an eye on it here too. Tons of excitement, especially in this offseason where there's so much change for the Vikings. But that's going to do it for this edition of the North Star Takes podcast. Like I said earlier, be sure to give this video a like and hit the subscribe button on this channel. Feel free to follow us on both Twitter and Instagram, and leave your comments below. What are your thoughts on some of these guys we've talked about, especially the corners? I know the fans love the corners. Let us know who you think would be a good fit for the Vikings at pick number 12, and if you think maybe they should trade up or trade back. Just your thoughts on the NFL draft in general. So until next time, thanks for watching.